Hello, everyone. It's not the weekend yet, and I'm doing a reading update because I finished a book, Educated by Tara Westover, and I wanted to talk about it. And I realized it's the 14th, which means it is 2 weeks since the beginning of the month. And I was going to do a reading update every week. And I decided not to do one at day 7 because of the book haul, which turned into 3 videos and lots of stuff for people to watch. And so, yeah, I don't regret that decision. It seems like everybody that's been watching them has been getting some ideas about what they might want to read next, which is great. That's the whole point, in my view, of book hauls, is like, I noticed these books as being potentially of interest. Maybe other people would too, and maybe they want to read them with me and all that fun stuff. So that's great. But in the meantime, the month is getting along. It is the 14th, and I've read 22 books so far this month. And if I keep going at this rate, my reading update, if I just do one for the entire month, is going to be 2 or 3 hours long, and that's ridiculous. So, we're going to do a reading update. I'm going to go through the print books that I've finished so far, mention some of the non-print books that I've finished so far, and then talk about Educated. Because I have stuff to talk about with Educated. But first, so my progress so far and my goals. I've been trying to finish some of my print arcs that I've had forever, mostly from back when I felt like entering a lot of Goodreads giveaways, and while I was still winning them occasionally. And I don't know what their algorithm is set for, but I haven't won them in forever. So I pretty much stopped even putting my name in anymore. It's just busy work at this point. But I do have a few from a while back that I've been going through, finishing them up so they can go to my sister and then go away. So I finished this one, The Chocolate Cheesecake Murder by Joanne Fluke, which is not anywhere near the beginning of the series. I read the first 2 last month. So I kind of knew who some of the characters were and had a sense that you could probably get the plot just fine without reading them in order, which is true. I'm not really addicted to this series. I'm not a baker. I don't have an oven that works right now, so baking is not an option, even if I was inspired to make the food that they're doing. I can't make most of it. I don't have a kitchen that has enough functioning to be able to do what they're doing. I seem to attract living situations like that. So for the moment, I can think about what I would do if I had a working oven, but that's not very inspiring. I might not race to read this entire series because my living situation is temporarily stable, but in the next couple years, I will have to live somewhere else eventually. And who knows, wherever I go next, the oven might work. And if I'm reading the rest of the series then, maybe I can be inspired to bake the thing they're talking about and have that smell while I'm reading the book, which I have a feeling would change the experience of reading the book. So that's kind of my thinking. There's so many books. I don't think Joanne Fluke is died or is dying. Of course, now that I say that, knock on wood, but she doesn't look that old in her picture in the back of the book. So hopefully, if I put it off a little while, I can maybe have a better experience of the rest of her books. Because they're not bad, just I feel like I'm not quite the audience that I otherwise might be for these books. But I finished it. It can go to my sister. I'm also not a chocolate person so much. Cheese, jalapenos, sort of the taco flavors, yes. Chocolate, I have to be in just the right mood. So anyway, there's that one. I finished Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I enjoyed it. Not nearly as much as her later work. This is an early book by her, and it felt early. I think she's developed her writing style much better going forward. Her newest one, that was the Women's Prize nominee, that was much stronger writing than this, but still good. And then I finished 2 books that I got from the book haul already. Yes, I finished Brick Lane by Monica Ali, and Amy and Isabel by Elizabeth Strout. I feel like I'm reading a sequence of books that are all about poor parenting, and sort of systemic child abuse. Because, yeah, there's been a lot of that as a theme this month. And Amy and Isabel, it's more a mom that has major secrets that are affecting how she's parenting, but that she's not aware of, and that have set her daughter up for issues. And yeah, they're both kind of dealing with the mom's past because the mom isn't dealing with it. So a bit different from these other 2 books. Brick Lane felt like an exploration of how religion, especially misogynist traditional religions, are abusive, and all the different ways that abuse is built into the system. And there are other ways to read it. It is literature. There's nuances to the book. It's a good book club book. If you're looking for world literature for a book club, Brick Lane by Monica Ali. It's about a Bangladeshi woman who is married off to an older dude, and goes to live in London. And she's from a small Bangladeshi village. And he wanted her because she's an unspoiled girl from the village. Yeah. Which is a bad sign. And you get the sense that he's getting himself a wife the way one would buy an appliance, a piece of furniture. Just, he felt like he needed a wife, so he went and bought one, kind of thing. Yeah. It is really good that I don't live in a culture where arranged marriage is a thing. I'd probably have been stoned to death by now, because that's just awful. Anyway, yeah. So I went off with this one, and did a few audiobooks and ebooks, and then dove into Educated by Tara Westover, which I found in audiobook, but I had it in print. So the book. And I started out, I was listening to this one as an audiobook after I finished the previous audiobook, and reading Broken America, which I'm still reading. I'm about 30% into that one. Which it's really good. It has a lot of stuff to think about, and being someone who is reflected in the poverty being discussed in a lot of these chapters, it's definitely one of those books that makes you think about where you sit relative to other poor people, and how weird my situation really is, and like non-stereotypical. But yeah, and with the way U.S. politics is going right now, and they're trying to establish a budget and trying to, cut poor people's support services more than they already have, and as if, completely cutting the supports for the poorer half of the United States is going to make the United States somehow stronger. Yeah, I love it. Anyway, so I got a little bit distracted from Broken America. I think a chapter at a time is probably better for me. Otherwise, I get angry and frustrated and go down rabbit holes too much. So, educated. Yes, because that's so much better for the mental health. So, Educated is about a woman, Tara Westover, who grew up in a fundamentalist household that was kind of a prep family, disaster prep family, but religious orientation, Mormon religious orientation, which is kind of important. But I find that a lot of the experiences of kids who grew up in fundamentalist households are awfully similar, regardless of the name of the religion they started out from. And I say that because I started out in a fundamentalist family as well, and I also feel like I escaped. Very much like the less sensationalizable version of Ms. Westover's book. So every once in a while I come across these stories, either on YouTube or in book form, and it's an interesting experience when you've had a variation on their stories, like comparing notes, like which parts are, things where you got lucky and they didn't, and vice versa. In my case, my family wasn't nearly as zealous as the Westovers sound like they were. So it was more poverty than religious zealotry for us. And I knew from a fairly young age, partly because of my disability and needing to rely on my brain in place of being physically healthy, I knew that I was a very smart kid from a pretty young age, because that's what everybody focused on as the positive about me as a little kid. And just the way that all set up, I was lucky in that respect. But the poverty makes the way I escaped maybe less successful. I don't know. So I've got things that I'm pondering now about, okay, what worked for her that didn't work for me and why? And there's things I could very strongly relate to. My family was Adventist, which is a bit different from the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. But both religions started around the same time and had very similar underpinnings. So even though the details are different, I've compared notes before with kids that left Mormon churches when I was, early 20s and mid 20s. And yeah, they're very similar feeling religions. Except I think Adventism is less misogynistic. Still not great, but it could be worse. Anyway, so I found it really interesting reading and listening to this book. Like the things that you don't think of at the time as being stuff you're lucky about. And the ways that you rewrite your history every time you come across someone else's story or have to reevaluate things that you thought you knew. All that's, it's an interesting experience. And I was thinking this time about like that experience when you're from one of these backgrounds and you go into everyday society as a college student, which Ms. Westover did and describes in her book really well. And I recognize that experience because I did not talk about my family and what I was leaving to be in college for years after I started college to any of my friends. I didn't fit in, and I was very poor. I couldn't go out and do stuff with my friends because I didn't have any money, and I was still coming off of the fundamentalist lifestyle. So most of what they wanted to do, I'd never done before. I couldn't see why anyone would want to do it. And it was intimidating enough that the first time I ordered a drink in a bar, I was in my late 30s, to give you an idea. So it was interesting, like, how much you don't talk about, and you don't think other people notice, and you don't think that it affects you and your lifestyle until looking back. You're like, well, everybody else that age in that environment was doing these things, and I never did any of that. Like, I've never been to a house party ever until grad school, and that was in my late 30s. Well, mid 30s was the house party, and I've only been to like 2 or 3 ever in my life. Yeah. And we were sitting around talking about philosophy and drinking whiskey. So, very tame in the world of house parties. Yeah. But for me, even though I left our family's church actually when I was a preteen, so my story is a little bit different shape than hers, I never left some of that mentality. I do love whiskey, and I do enjoy some wines. But it still feels like I'm acting grown up when I drink alcohol, even though I'm old enough that I could have kids in college now. I just have never been able to shake that idea that alcohol is of the devil, and things like that. I don't go to movie theaters. In our congregation, movie theaters were of the devil. And the first time I went into one was I was being brave when I was 17, and I went to a movie with an exchange student friend who wanted to go to a movie, and I was her best friend in our school, so of course I would go with her. And I didn't tell her, and I don't know if her host family or anybody else realized that was the first time I had been to a movie in a movie theater ever. And I tried very hard to act like this is just normal. And so I recognized that in some of what Tara's talking about in her book, and because she does that too. She'd go to a coffee shop with friends, and it was the first time she'd ever had coffee and the first time she'd ever gone to a coffee shop. Like the first time I had alcohol in public in my 30s, even though I'd been to grad school at that point for a while and been acting grown up for a while, I still would not mention that I'd never had a beer in public before. So, yeah. And I would not have thought that I was prone to any weird hang-ups from my childhood, because I have a psych degree and I think about things all the time, and still, like, why would that have been something I needed to be so secretive about? But I couldn't talk about it. So I probably have all sorts of friends who just think I'm really weird because I don't act quite the way I should, but I won't admit that I'm doing something for the first time. Anyway, so, every time you come across a story like this, when you've had that kind of background, it makes you look back at your own narrative and how you've framed things for yourself. And sometimes what you were doing made sense, but now you have a different perspective on how to explain it to others. Sometimes you forgive yourself for things that just didn't work out, because why would you have known to do that? It's not just you. If you weren't taught these things as a child and didn't have that support as an adult, you don't just magically know these things. Of course you don't. And so don't beat yourself up over it. So anyway, so it was an interesting experience. If you have a background like this and have not explored other people's stories, and especially if you also don't have a psych background, I think I was lucky because that was something I turned to for other reasons. So I do have kind of I wouldn't say it's a split personality. I have a part of my brain, though, that is always monitoring what I'm doing. And almost like I have my internal psychologist that's, making sure that I'm not getting too caught up in something that I'm becoming pathological about it, which may be a pathology in itself, but for now it works. But if you are not sure that you are emotionally and mentally ready to examine everything, I would say find a group online, find a friend to buddy read it with, something like that. At my stage, as I said, I'm old enough I could have kids in college at this point. But if I was, 15, 20 years ago reading this book, I would have probably needed to have someone to buddy read it with so that we could talk about it every few chapters. What's going on? What's triggering? What's upsetting? How do you relate to this story and why? And what does that mean? And what do you take out of it? And, talk about your experiences and all that stuff. So if you're not coming from that background, that's great. I don't realize sometimes the extent to which my background makes it impossible for me to imagine normal family life. I can't imagine a family that sits around the table and has dinner every night. We kind of did for a while when I was really young, but it was not nice. And, things like that. So if you had the kind of family that's more normal and healthy, that is fantastic. If you meet people while you're going around, doing everyday things that are, look like deer in headlights kind of thing, just there are more of us than there seem to be from the outside because we don't talk about it. So just, be supportive. I don't know what else you could say on that one, because if I was younger and more vulnerable about it still, I don't think I'd want anyone to say they noticed. But just having someone modeling, buying a beer at a bar, just modeling how it's done, and hey, my favorite out of these is this beer, and you want to try it and order one, and you try it and learn by example without it being really obvious that you're modeling this is how you order a drink at a bar. I had some great friends when I was discovering that part of being a grown-up. But I've talked with people where it went disastrously the first time they tried to do grown-up things like that, and so they just never went back. And they just assume that they just can't do those things. And then they shut down, and I'm betting that there's a lot of people that are just invisible in society because they've had such a rough upbringing, and then they never really integrate afterwards because they get shut down by their own lack of preparation to deal with things and not having the supports from around them. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack in this book. It was definitely a good read. Not traumatic. It ends on a high note. And looking at pictures online of where this lady is now, she's doing great. I'm sure she has hang-ups like I have that you think you're over it and then something comes up and you're like, oh, never mind. The past is still there. I'm still dealing with it. And I have a feeling that's going to be true for all of us that have had that kind of upbringing. And, there are plenty of kids in a lot of these religions, so there's a lot of us out there. And any of them that have left or that have decided that fundamentalist approaches to their religion are not their thing, there's going to be a lot of us out there. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the most impactful book I've read so far this month. The arc that I'm in the middle of, in the beginning middle of, is The Battle of the Big Bang by Nayesh Afshari. Afshari, yes, there's an R. And this one is by a woman physicist who I've actually seen on programs with Neil deGrasse Tyson, I believe. And the co-author is Phil Halper. Yes, Halper. Who I don't really know much about, although I may have seen him because I watch a lot of space stuff on YouTube sometimes. But it's going through different models of how the universe works and the beginning of the universe. So very exciting. I did 2 years of a physics degree as my first foray into college, back when I was escaping fundamentalism and had no clue how you pick a major. I thought I did. I read Atlas Shrugged, the character I admired, studied physics and philosophy, and since I wanted to be like that character, I should study physics and philosophy, of course. So I studied physics formally and started reading philosophy, and I had an inadequate math background to do a physics major and had a very sexist advisor. The combination meant that I did 2 years and then switched to psychology. But I've always loved astrophysics, so I was really looking forward to this arc, and will probably be reading it more than Broken America for the rest of the night. Although I am intending to finish both in the next 24 hours. But I'm enjoying it so far already. And yeah. So anyway, let's see. If there's any other books I want to talk about while I've got a semi-captive audience. Oh, I did start the Murderbot Diaries. I've finished the first 2. They are fantastic. Everyone that's recommended them to me, yes, they are fun. I finished Nicked by M.T. Anderson, which came out July of last year. It's a heist in which a bunch of monks go off with some mercenary types to steal some reliquary bones from another group of monks. It's absolutely hilarious. Definitely recommend it. Not maybe a 5-star, but it's still really fun. I finished Behind You Is the Sea by Susan Mwadi Daraj. I know that's not how they said it in the audiobook, though. I know there's a smoother way to pronounce this lady's name, but in any case, that one's off the BookTube Prize checklist, and it was really good. I won't say much more about that one, because there's a lot of people reading it for the BookTube Prize judging. So hopefully we'll hear lots about that one from people that are feeling more articulate right now. Tiananmen Square by Lai Wen. I believe it's Lai Wen. That I'm not ever sure about, whether Goodreads swaps the names incorrectly or not. Anyway, this one is also on the BookTube Prize list. It's about a young girl who is coming of age in the years leading up to the Tiananmen Square massacre, and who gets drawn into the fringes of the group that is protesting in the Tiananmen Square massacre. So a really interesting look at the society leading up to that in China. So very good. All right. And I also did Sandwich by Catherine Newman off the BookTube Prize checklist, which was okay. 4 stars for me. Out of those 3 BookTube Prize checklist books, my favorite was Tiananmen Square. But I don't think they were all in the same section for judging. Thankfully, I am not one of the judges, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I finished Blackwood's Blue Sky by Yoan Ivey. That one was really good. I'd started it before and didn't really get very far into it. And finally got far enough into it that I recognized the fairy tale and like, oh, that was fun. I finished Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, which was fun, 4 stars. It reminded me of Tony Hillerman and Rodolfo Anaya, and I like both of those authors. So I will be looking for more Stephen Graham Jones books that are kind of the Indian theme, the Western theme. I liked that aspect. And they weren't that graphic and bloody, so I did appreciate that. But I'm not much of a horror reader. I finished Model Home by Rivers Solomon, which was fun. It's a killer house, maybe. I won't say more than that. That's the premise that we're supposed to have, and yeah, killer house, basically. And there's a twist to it, but beyond that, it was really good. I recommend it. Not a 5-star again, but really, entertaining. It was a fun book. I finished The River Has Roots by Amal El Moshtar. That was really good. 5 stars. Let's see. How to Stand Up to a Dictator by Maria Ressa. This one was really good. It was nonfiction about Maria Ressa's career leading up to being arrested and detained in the Philippines. She was actually a CNN reporter who moved up in the ranks and then ended up doing journalism on a more management side in the Philippines, where she was originally from. And, of course, being a journalist was covering a lot of the stuff that was criticizing the dictators and would-be dictators in the Philippines. And obviously, if you don't have freedom of the press, then that's a very dangerous thing to do. So it's an interesting book, because I would like to think that I have the guts to be that kind of figure. I don't know if I do. There's some things that I will stand up for, and I don't have kids, and I don't have as much to risk. So there are things that I do as an individual that if I had kids to worry about, I probably wouldn't do. But I don't know if I have the guts, the willpower to do the kind of stuff that that figures like that do, where you're in the public eye and saying things you're going to be arrested for. We'll find out, maybe, but hopefully not. But certainly a great book to read. It's not about the U.S., but it does have some things to say. that U.S. readers will find particularly thought-provoking. Yeah. So it's been a good reading month so far. I've finished 4 or 5 NetGalley arcs so far. For being the 14th, that's not so bad. And I should be done with another one in the next 24 hours. So Kooky Mayhem is going well. I've been on screen with a few of my friends so far and made a few new friends along the way. So that's been fun. Yeah, and I think I've agreed to maybe do a buddy read in November, but now I'm going to have to go back and see what exactly we said we were reading, because I remember saying November and I don't remember anymore which book we were talking about. So I have to figure out which one I was on, where I was chatting with Anna, I should say, about what we were going to read in November as a buddy read. Yeah, it's been that kind of month. So by the end of the month, I'll have a whole list of things that we've discussed, different people reading and things to do on sprints and stuff. So I probably should start getting organized and actually writing these things down. We'll see if that happens. There may be another book haul this weekend. I don't know, because it really depends on whether I get to take leftover books after the sale, which is the manager's call, and she'll be there, I think, on Saturday. So there may be more books, but I got the ones I really wanted. There's just other books that, if they're available, if they're going away anyway, then I kind of want them. By the box loads, so I can just do this efficiently, just not have to keep bringing books home every day. So we'll see. So if there's a book haul, that's what it is. Otherwise, there's still the 3 that, if you haven't seen all 3, there's lots of books to look at in all those. And I've already got some of the ones from those 3 videos in my TBR that I'm working on this week. So you may see a few more of those with whether I like them and whether I recommend them fairly shortly. So anyway, hopefully you guys are having a great reading month. Let me know if you have read anything you think I ought to read, and what you thought of the books that I've been talking about in this video. And I will see you somewhere on the interwebs. Some are probably in Kooky Sprints or in my next video. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye!